Hi folks, we're going to take a look at this last question from the previous lesson. So here they tell us that we have a tunnel in the shape of a parabola that's 8 meters wide at the base and 8 meters tall at its highest point. And it says determine a model for the tunnel. So as before, we'd like ideally an analytical model, in other words, an equation, but I'm going to use a diagram to help me come up with an equation. All right, so let's draw this tunnel. So I got the ground here, and we've got this tunnel which is shaped like a parabola, and what we know is that it's 8 meters wide at the base, okay, and it's 8 meters tall at its highest point. Now this is great, except if I want an equation, I'm going to need to fit this onto a Cartesian plane. So the question is where do we put our axes? And I would say that there's one axis which is pretty straightforward, and that would be the x-axis, because we assume that we're measuring the height from the ground. So here it makes sense to make the ground, I'll use a red pen here, our x-axis. Now the question is where do we put our y-axis? I mean, technically we can put it anywhere. The idea is to choose, an intelligent spot to put it. And I would say that you've got a few choices. Okay, you could certainly put it right here at the beginning, okay, where the tunnel starts. I would say that would be a likely place to put it, so then it goes up and comes down. Or I would say maybe even better is why not put it right through the middle of the parabola. Okay, in other words, make the y-intercept the axis of symmetry for this parabola. Okay, now think about it. That means this parabola is not going to need a horizontal translation. Okay, because the vertex is already on the y-axis. All right, now having said that, could you have done this with the axis right on the edge? Yes, of course. Okay, but this is probably, I'd say, a little easier. So this is the model I'm going to use graphically, and of course our goal now is to come up with an analytical model. All right, so what we have is we have a vertex of 0, 8. All right, so since we have information about the vertex, it makes sense that we're going to use vertex form of the equation. All right, but as we saw in the previous example, we know we're going to need another piece of information. It's not enough to just have the vertex. I'm going to need another point. Well, guess where I'm going to find my other points? At the bottom here, at the base of the parabola, because I know that this whole thing is 8 meters wide. And remember that a parabola is symmetrical. So in other words, it has to be the same on either side. So if the whole thing is 8 meters, then this is going to have to be 4, and that's going to have to be equal to -4. So in fact, we've got 2 points on this parabola. I've got the point 40, and I've got the point -40. So that'll be that other piece of information that I'll need. Okay, so let's start by putting in our vertex. So y is equal to a times x minus, well, x value is 0, so x minus 0 squared, okay, plus k, which is 8. All right, and in fact, this simplifies. It's just going to be ax squared plus 8. And as before, the only thing left to find is the a value. And so now I can just use either of these points to find the a value. So I'm going to use the 4. Seems a little easier. So that means when x is equal to 4, y is equal to 0. So 0 equals a times, and so here we have, well, 4 minus 0 is just going to be 4 squared plus 8, and the only thing left to solve for is a. Okay, so on the right-hand side, 4 squared, so that's 16a. This plus 8 bring it to the other side, it'll become minus 8, and so a is just equal to -8 over 16, or -1/2. And again, we shouldn't be surprised to get a negative value since this parabola is opening downwards. And so now we can write out our equation. Y is equal to -1/2. I'm not going to write the x minus 0, since subtracting 0 doesn't make a difference. So it's going to be negative 1/2 x squared plus 8. All right, so there we have it. So steps for solving this problem. Since it's a physical problem, draw a picture. Okay, but if I want to come up with an equation, this picture has to have a Cartesian plane overlaid on it. So I reasoned out that an easy place to put the y-axis would be right down the middle, make it our axis of symmetry, and the x-axis would just represent the ground. So from there, we saw that our vertex was 0, 8, inputted that into our vertex form of the parabola, and then we needed another piece of information to solve for a, and I was able to reason out the x-intercepts. And I use this x-intercept of 4, 0 in order to determine the equation. Okay, that's it for this one.